Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Okay, so picture that you're doing all the right things eating healthy, exercise, and all that good stuff. But your blood sugar is still all over the place. It's so frustrating.
Well, I haven't told you that maybe. The secret weapon for stable blood sugar might be hiding in plain sight. Or rather, under the covers. Today we're going deep on the link between sleep and blood sugar control. And it turns out those precious zzzz might be more crucial for our metabolic health than we realize. And to help us with this deep dive, we've got a fascinating health news article from Medical Express and the original scientific study published in JAMA Network Open Now.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about these sources is that they don't just focus on how much sleep we get, but also the importance of sleep timing and consistency. It really challenges our assumptions about what actually is good sleep hygiene. Exactly. The Medical Express article pointed out that even missing just a little bit of sleep, like consistently getting just under the recommended 8 hours, can increase what they call glycemic variability. I'll admit that term was kind of new to me. So what exactly does glycemic variability mean, and why should we care?
Okay, so think of it this way. Imagine your blood sugar levels as a roller coaster, with high glycemic variability. Your blood sugar is on this wild ride, swinging high and low throughout the day. But stable blood sugar is more like a leisurely train ride. Nice, smooth, and predictable.
Okay, I'm getting a much clearer picture now. So those spikes and dips in blood sugar, even if we don't necessarily feel them, they're not good for us.
Exactly. They can increase the risk of various health complications over time, especially for people with diabetes or those at risk.
And that's where this study gets really interesting. They didn't just rely on those standard fasting blood sugar tests. They went a step further and used something called continuous glucose monitoring devices.
Yeah, continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, is like having a behind-the-scenes look at your blood sugar throughout the day and night. So instead of just a single snapshot, these devices provide continuous stream of data, revealing all those subtle fluctuations that traditional tests might miss.
It's like having a blood sugar detective on the case, constantly tracking those ups and downs. So what did these blood sugar detectives uncover in this study?
Well, this particular study was conducted in China, and it involved over 1,100 participants between the ages of 46 and 83.
Wow, it's a pretty big group. So they basically hooked all these people up with CGM devices and monitored their blood sugar while they slept.
Not exactly. The researchers first tracked the participants' sleep patterns over several years. They looked at how long people typically slept each night, and also their usual bedtime. Then they used CGM to monitor their blood sugar continuously for 14 days. This gave them a really detailed picture of how sleep patterns were connected to blood sugar fluctuations.
So they weren't just looking at a single night of sleep, but rather long-term sleep habits. That's really impressive. So what did they discover?
One of the key findings was that people who consistently got less than the recommended 8 hours of sleep had significantly greater glycemic variability. And here's the kicker. Even those who were just slightly sleep deprived, getting around 6 to 7 hours a night, still experience more blood sugar swings compared to those consistently getting 8 or more hours.
So even if we think we're doing okay with 7 hours, that extra hour could make a real difference in keeping our blood sugar stable.
Precisely. It highlights the importance of not just aiming for a certain number of hours, but really prioritizing that full 8 hours whenever possible.
And the study didn't just stop there. They also looked at the timing of sleep. The article mentioned something about late sleep onset being linked to blood sugar issues. Even if sleep duration was sufficient, what's the deal with that?
It turns out that our bodies have this internal clock, known as our circadian rhythm, which regulates various physiological processes, including hormone production and metabolism. When we consistently go to bed late, we kind of disrupt this natural rhythm. It's like throwing a wrench in the gears of our internal machinery. And as you might guess, this disruption can affect how our bodies regulate blood sugar, leading to those roller coaster-like fluctuations.
So it's not just about quantity, but also quality and timing. When it comes to sleep and its effect on our blood sugar, it seems like our bodies really thrive on routine.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
I have to admit, I'm a bit of a night owl myself, so this information is making me rethink my late night habits.
Well, it's all about finding what works best for you and your body's natural rhythms. But this study certainly highlights the potential impact of those late nights, even if you think you're making up for it. with enough total sleep.
It's definitely a lot to consider.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too carried away with these findings, we should probably acknowledge that this study wasn't perfect, right? The article mentioned some limitations.
You are absolutely right. It's important to be aware of the study's limitations. For instance, they relied on participants self-reporting their sleep habits. And while they tracked those habits over a long period, there's always a chance of some inaccuracies.
So people might not have remembered their sleep times perfectly.
Yeah.
And that could have skewed the results a bit.
Exactly. And of course, sleep is just one piece of the puzzle. When it comes to blood sugar control, there are so many other factors at play, like diet, exercise, stress levels, even other medical conditions.
Right. It's never just one thing in isolation. But even with those limitations, the fact that this study followed people for years and still found such a strong connection between sleep and blood sugar, it's pretty compelling, wouldn't you say?
I agree. The strength of the association they found, despite relying on self-reported data, really highlights that sleep shouldn't be overlooked as a factor in metabolic health.
So let's bring this back to our listeners. For those of us who might be guilty of skimping on sleep or having erratic sleep schedules, what's the key takeaway here? Should we be panicking?
There's no need to panic, but definitely a need for awareness. The key message is that prioritizing both sufficient sleep duration and consistent sleep timing can play a huge role in maintaining stable blood sugar levels and overall metabolic health.
So instead of thinking of sleep as like a luxury, we should really view it as an essential part of a healthy lifestyle, just like eating well and exercising.
Absolutely. And even small adjustments can make a difference. It's not about achieving perfection overnight, but rather about making gradual changes that we can realistically incorporate into our daily lives.
That makes sense. So what are some practical tips that our listeners can implement to improve their sleep hygiene? Let's start with timing. What about those of us who are like night owls by nature? Is it possible to retrain our internal clocks?
It can be challenging, but it's definitely possible. To shift your sleep schedule gradually, a good starting point is to try moving your bedtime and wake-up time by 15-30 minutes earlier each day until you reach your desired schedule. It's like a slow and steady approach that can help your body adjust without feeling too drastic.
I can see how that would be more sustainable than trying to change everything at once. So consistency is key for timing. What about the duration of sleep? How can we make sure we're getting those crucial 8 hours, especially with busy schedules?
It often comes down to prioritizing sleep and making it non-negotiable. Sometimes that means saying no to late-night commitments or adjusting our evening routines to create more downtime before bed. Think about it like scheduling an important meeting with yourself, a meeting with your pillow.
I love that analogy. Treating sleep as a non-negotiable appointment with ourselves. I think that's something many of us need to hear. But it's not just about how much we sleep and when we sleep right. The quality of our sleep also matters.
You are absolutely correct. Tossing and turning all night, even if you're in bed for 8 hours, isn't going to give you the restorative sleep your body needs. And poor sleep quality can absolutely affect blood sugar control.
So how do we improve the quality of our sleep? Any secret tips or tricks up your sleeve?
Well, there's no magic formula, but a relaxing bedtime routine can work wonders. Things like dimming the lights an hour or two before bed, taking a warm bath, reading a book, or listening to calming music can signal to your body that it's time to wind down.
It's about creating those cozy rituals that help us de-stress and transition into sleep mode. And what about our sleep environment? Does that play a role in sleep quality?
Absolutely. Our bedrooms should be sanctuaries for sleep. Make sure yours is dark, quiet, and cool. Invest in blackout curtains if needed. Use a white noise machine to drown out any distracting sounds. And keep the temperature comfortably cool.
So basically, we want to turn our bedrooms into sleep caves.
Precisely. It's all about creating an environment that promotes deep restorative sleep.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how even slightly less than 8 hours of sleep can impact blood sugar control, the importance of consistent sleep timing, and how even small adjustments to our sleep habits can make a difference. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up this deep dive?
Well, I think it's important to remember that prioritizing sleep is an act of self-care. It's not selfish. It's essential for our physical and mental well-being. And the great thing is, even small changes can have like a ripple effect on our overall health.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, I really need to step up my sleep game, don't be overwhelmed. Start with one or two things you can realistically incorporate into your routine. Maybe it's setting a consistent bedtime or creating a relaxing bedtime ritual.
Exactly. Small steps consistently applied can lead to significant improvements over time. And remember, sleep is a journey, not a destination. There will be nights when you sleep better than others. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Well said. On that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into sleep and blood sugar. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to create a super cozy sleep sanctuary tonight.
That sounds like an excellent plan. Sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams to you too, and to all our listeners out there. Sleep well and take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.